The gypsum holds cold the way some people hold grudges. At night in white sands, even your teeth feel the air. I was 50 and on contract, instrumentation and range safety, back at a place that had aged better than I had. We were a small team on a maintenance night. Verify the mast cams, zero the load cells on an instrumented target, run comms checks, flex the muscle memory you pray you'll never need for an actual test. Nothing dramatic, just the ritual of making sure the numbers will mean what they claim. Not all contact is friendly, the supervisor said before we left the trailer, the way some people say grace. He'd been saying it for years, and I'd learned to hear it as both warning and apology. The radio net was quiet enough to hear the hiss changing shape when the wind turned. The dunes breathed a little. You can tell from the way the surface whispers under your boots. On night work, you only point white light at your own feet, but even that felt loud. We were out on the flats with 2 trucks, a utility cart, and enough gear to fix the thing that breaks as soon as you swear you'll be home by 3. I'd clipped the little notebook I use for time marks to my vest. My hands do better when they get to make ledger lines. The mast cam gave us a sky full of congregated stars and a horizon that pretended to be trustworthy. Our target sat where we'd left it. Dull, stubborn, a collection of sensors that never ask to be the main character. We were not alone. But that's a sentence I'm writing from the future. In the moment, I just wanted my spare battery to stop flirting with empty. I don't know when the radio went thin. 1 second my ear had the net's usual static life, the next it was sterile. No hiss, no click, just the shape of hearing without content. The handset screen froze 03.1308, and then, when it thought I wasn't looking, 03.1308 again. My pen ticked the time. My brain said, don't be cute. 3 low lights had appeared where you would never put a vehicle and where towers don't live. No engine. No rotor, no wash. They were the color of a hospital hallway, and they moved like hesitation learned to fly. Short lateral, hold, short lateral, hold. Not all contact is friendly, the supervisor said again. Not louder, not softer, like he just had the thought. I raised my hand in a circle and the flare went up. We don't point guns at questions. We paint questions with light. The sky opened like the inside of a shell, white over white, with that powdery bloom you only get when magnesium pretends it's the sun. Through NVGs, the world went soft and fat, every edge wearing a halo it didn't apply for. People call it blooming. To me, it looks like the night sweating. The 3 lights reacted in a way I wish they hadn't, because it made us human at the worst possible time. They tilted, the way attentive heads tilt when they're listening. Then they moved, short zigs, short zags, then a clean line toward the instrumented target, and, this is the part my mouth still tries to sand down before the sentence comes out, they fused. A single coin of light, then 2 again. One of our younger operators breathed a word that grew up too fast. The radio stayed sterile. The net was a photograph. We fired first. It was a bad decision, born in a good training. Dissuasion, fire, above and forward. Non-penetrating. Tracers to carry the message we see you without writing a sentence you can't take back. It is meant to be done with eyes and ears intact. We didn't have ears. I didn't call it. I didn't stop it. I own that. 2 green pencils climbed into a night that bent around them as if annoyed. The lights recoiled without moving. Closer, then farther, then they were simply farther. The gypsum under our boots shuddered the way a drumhead shivers when a hand hovers above it. My stomach flipped once, a clean, dry heave that did not finish because the body had better plans. A metallic taste bloomed in my mouth that I will always call pennies even though it wasn't. My left ear sang, a tight single-note zinning that hasn't retired. The flare burned out with the dignity of a good exit. The NVGs shook off their bloom like a dog shaking dry. The radio on my shoulder unclenched and the net returned with 3 words at once. Say again. We have. Negative. The supervisor said the only thing a man can say that doesn't embarrass everybody. Hold, hold. The target's telemetry, the beautiful, boring stream we came to babysit, fell to 0 as if offended and stayed there a hateful minute. I watched 0313 climb and make itself presentable again on the handset screen. I scribbled 03.1303.14 in my notebook and underlined it, because the hand likes to be useful even when the head is not. The lights had backed out to a polite distance, if that word applies, and then spaced themselves like punctuation. 1, then 2, then the third, not quite where grammar would place it. They did nothing else. We did less. The supervisor put one finger in the air, which was both a command and a prayer. The night put its sounds back on, not all at once, but like a room resuming a conversation after the judge leaves. "Not all contact is friendly," he said for the third time, and I heard something in it I hadn't when the evening started. Regret. Inside my head, something answered. Hold fire. Hold story. If you don't pull a trigger, you don't owe anyone's God a parable. If you keep your mouth shut, you buy yourself time to measure. We measured. Then we paid. Here is what I can tell you without teaching anyone how to get in trouble. I'm an instrumentation tech who used to wear a uniform and learned how to count professionally. If it plugs in, I like it. If it needs calibration, I say yes. If it involves calling anything secret, I want it to be boring. My job in 2012 was to make sure the baseline was honest. Cameras, load cells, radio timings, power, the unspectacular glue that keeps an event from turning into a campfire lie. White sands at night holds everything you didn't ask for. Gypsum glare, air so dry your lips remember every bad habit, wind that eats sound and returns static, training phrases that outlive the reason they were written. Our safety rulebook is blunt. Identify, illuminate, communicate. Only then do you do something that could be confused with aggression. We did the first two. The third failed for 6 to 7 seconds at the precise moment muscle memory reached for a tool, and the youngest set of muscles in the circle of us beat the older. Nobody died. That is not the only measure. After the flare, as the radio net folded back into shape, I watched the handset clock admit it had just been somewhere it shouldn't. The frozen 031308 appeared again before it let 031309 arrive. The same second twice. If you've stared at digital clocks under stress, you know you don't see what you think you see. I wrote it anyway because numbers deserve witnesses. We recovered the target's telemetry after its minute of sulk. The stream came back ugly. Headers crooked, time base jittered, then straightened as if the room had been scolded. We did not chase the lights. They did not invite pursuit. On the mast cam's thermal channel, a pale hole bloomed and disappeared where the lights had paused. Cold where heat should have been. Not for long. Just enough to make 3 of us say something we pretend was a cough. We did not break into teams like the movies. We did what people do when their training has to cover a thing it didn't. We went slow, we didn't shout, we pretended to be smarter than the previous hour. We finished our checklists like superstition, and we went back to the trailer where coffee can't fix anything but helps. By morning, the dunes had recontoured themselves with that slick eraser move gypsum loves. We walked the area not because we expected boot prints, there are none after a wind, but because you're supposed to. Around the target, embedded in little patches like freckles, the gypsum bore microbubbles of glass, not full fulgurites, not dramatic tubes like lightning leaves, just beads the size of coarse sand, fused grains that looked like somebody tested a heat gun and decided against the job. They cracked under a fingernail with the feel of sugar. We did not find footprints. We found flares ash like you always do. The smell of ozone still lived in a shallow pocket that made my tongue doubt itself. "Report," the supervisor said. The after-action met in a room that always feels 5 degrees cooler than any of the rest, even when it isn't. We wrote. We spoke. We were careful with verbs. We were good at nouns. The phrase "dissuasion fire" read in a paragraph like something we chose not to look directly at. The radio log showed the lacuna, 6 seconds of nothing on the net, and the thing I knew I'd seen but didn't want to own. So 3:13 you owned, stamped twice in the recorded stream as if the timekeeper had hiccuped. The thermal stills printed with the cool bloom like a bruise. The target's data had a gap shaped like a minute. The NVG notes said bloom observed coincident with flare, short washout beyond typical. The word nausea appeared once in the margin with a set of tick marks beside it. Nobody stood up and said, UAP. Nobody said what you think they said. We stayed in our lane and we drew our lane narrower. The consequence did not arrive with a form. It arrived with bodies. The youngest operator's tinnitus planted itself in his left ear the way a stubborn animal chooses a porch. Mine nested there too, quieter but loyal. He left the job a month later, not in disgrace, not with a parade, just with a chin that tried not to announce how tired it was. Another guy, tough in the way a quiet father is tough, opted for a different contract where paperwork doesn't make your stomach weigh more. Night shifts got harder. The supervisor learned new silences. On the way out that day, I pocketed a single fused bead the exact size of a lentil, intending to throw it out and forgetting to. It lives in a drawer now where I keep things that make my fingers busy when my brain has choices it shouldn't. It feels like glass made by someone who doesn't owe gravity a debt. You want more certainty than I have. If I tried to sell you some, you'd hate me by next week. I can say this without dishonor. What came near our position did not act like something we could classify without lying. It responded to light. It seemed to listen when it tilted. It did not brag about propulsion. It did not heat what it should have heated. When we fired above and forward, it behaved neither like it was threatened nor like it was bored. It was aware and measured, which is a creepy combination for a man trained to love machines more than mysteries. We paid, as the title says, but the price was not blood and metals. It was consequence folded into the work. Radio trust eroded a degree. Confidence grew shoulders. Sleep learned to check a clock. 0313 wakes a man now and then, whether or not he deserves it. Calls from unknown numbers show up on Monday nights and hold the line for 7 seconds and then behave like adults. In a cold garage, sometimes I catch ozone when the metal rolls its shoulders and I don't feel like laughing. If you want a cinematic lesson, you won't like mine. It's procedural and small. If your rules say identify, illuminate, communicate, you must love those rules hard enough to adopt them when communication fails. Light is not dialogue. Sound is part of a handshake. The temptation to fill a hollow with a gesture is strong. Nothing we shot that night was lethal. Nothing we shot that night was wise. I still say, hold fire, hold story in my head when the room turns sideways. It's not moral courage. It's instrumentation. If you don't break the run, you can read the graph later without the shame of the noise being your own. If you expect me to use names, ranks, program titles, or to put coordinates you can paste into a map, I won't. That is the dull part of being ethical that gets you fewer subscribers and fewer lawyers. If you want to fight about what to call the 3 lights, you can do that in your own mouth. I'm not building a church here. I'm building a log. Here are the 5 anchors I can hand you like bolts. Time: 03:13 to 03:14. With a 6 of 7's radio blackout and a duplicated second in the handset and recorded stream. 03:08, 03:08 03:09. Optics, NVG. Bloom during the flare beyond usual with short washout. Lights tilted and then fused, split. Telemetries. Instrumented target zeroed for like 60s, then recovered. Mast thermal showed a cold bloom where light had been. Physical trace. Micro-glassy beads in the gypsum by morning. Ozone odor. No useful footprints in active dunes. Human cost. Tinnitus for 2 operators. 1 resignation. Sleep softened at 03:13. I can't walk you into the trailer. I can't open the archive. I can say the dull thing in a way I hope is useful. We fired first when the room deserved restraint, and we paid in the coin good crew's pay. Trust and quiet. If any part of this fits the shape of something you have lived, in a range, a field, a flight line where comms dropped for 5-7 seconds, NVGs bloomed against your better experience. A clock did a second twice. Cold showed where light had been, and a choice turned into a bill due later. Leave me 1 word in the comments. paid. Don't share locations. Don't share procedures. Don't put anyone's job in your mouth. Just paid. I'll know you know the taste. Not all contact is friendly, the supervisor said. He wasn't telling me to hate. He was telling me how to count. I go back in my head to the first flare's light over the gypsum, the way it made the white world whiter, how the night sweated through the NVGs, the coin of light that shouldn't have known what listening looks like. If I could stand up in that moment again, I wouldn't be brave. I would be boring. I would hold. I would measure. I would treat the air's silence as part of the equation, not a vacuum to fill with gestures I can't ungesture. We fired first. We paid after. The dunes did what dunes do, erased better than we could remember. The tinnitus keeps a ledger. The bead of fused gypsum in my drawer is older than the story I tell about it, and my left ear sometimes sings to it like a tuning fork nobody asked for. The range is still there, ungentle, honest. The rulebook still fits in a pocket. I carry a sharper pencil now and a worse memory for drama. If you ever find yourself in the white night and the radio goes thin and the lights tilt like they've learned your name, remember what a tech with bad knees and a drawer full of glass would tell you. Hold fire. Hold story. Measure. On the drive back through Alamogordo at sunrise, the mountains looked like someone had stacked shadows into a fence. The sky did its truce. The coffee maid demands it couldn't keep. I went home later and didn't say much. My wife can read what my ears won't say. She put her hand near the left one and let the quiet answer for me. There are worse debts.